The fact of the matter is, and let's say it in our debate because you'll never hear this from that immigrant-bashing carnival barker, Donald Trump. The truth of the matter is, net immigration from Mexico last year was 0. Fact check me. Go ahead, check it out. But the truth of the matter is, if we want wages to go up, we've got to get 11 million of our neighbors out of the off-the-book shadow economy and into the full light of an American economy.
According to Twitter, that was by far the most talked about soundbite, if you will, from former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. That is a bump shot of the spin room here at Drake University. Now we're coming full to our set, and we welcome to it the aforementioned former Governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley.
Hey, Major.
Governor O'Malley, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, what is the importance of that soundbite for you and your campaign? And are you happy that's your most tweeted moment of the night, or do you wish others would have been more tweeted?
No, look, I thought tonight went great for our campaign. I mean, we were able to make our case that in our American economy, it's all about inclusion. And to be able to make that point on immigration, especially in these times when we're all understandably have a lot of fears after what's happened in France, but to be able to just say very clearly that, look, we are made better by immigration. We are made better by new Americans in every generation. So I thought it was a very good night for us. We made our case. We need new leadership. We need an inclusive economy. And I'm pretty excited about this because our party always gravitates to the future. And we were able to make our case that alone on that stage, I've actually gotten so many of these things done.
When you talk about inclusion and a message that can possibly unify the country, there are those who have been drawn, for whatever reason, to some of the messaging from Donald Trump and other Republicans that want tougher border security. Can you be inclusive when you imply, at least at an indirect level, that they're motivated by racism?
Well, look, I think when anyone in the public arena says the sort of racist blanket things that Donald Trump says about others, in his case, all Mexicans, many of whose families have been here for 200 or 300 years, probably longer than some of Donald Trump's ancestors have been. I think all of us have a responsibility to push back. That kind of language, that kind of vilification, his call for creating swoop-up squads, I mean, it's this close to ethnic cleansing, and it's wrong, and it has no place in Americans' public discourse in the office for president.
I also want to play a soundbite for our audience, something at a moment that I believe struck a lot of people in the audience and certainly caught my attention. This is in the control room, soundbite number 1. It's a reference to boots on the ground overseas. Let's play that.
Is the world too dangerous a place for a governor who has no foreign policy experience?
John, the world is a very dangerous place, but the world is not too dangerous of a place for the United States of America, provided we act according to our principles, provided we act intelligently. I was in Burlington, Iowa, and a mom of a service member of ours who served 2 duties in Iraq said, "Governor O'Malley, please, when you're with your other candidates and colleagues on stage, please don't use the term boots on the ground. Please don't use the term boots on the ground. My son is not a pair of boots on the ground. These are American soldiers. And we fail them when we fail to take into account what happens the day after a dictator falls, and when we fail to act with a whole-of-government approach with sustainable development, diplomacy, and our economic power in alignment with our principles."
So, Governor, I'll give you another chance. Do you have the mettle it takes to be commander-in-chief to face the very serious national security challenges posed by what we saw in Paris not 24 hours ago and whatever may come next?
Yes, I do. And if I didn't, I would not be running, Major. Every year since the attacks of September 11th, my colleagues, Democratic and Republican mayors, and then my colleagues, Democratic and Republican governors, chose me to be one of their 2 leaders every single year on Homeland Security and preparedness. This is an issue that I have taken a passionate interest in ever since those attacks on September 11th. Being a big city mayor, I mean, the attitude, you can remember it at the time, it was, where's the next shoe? Look up, look down, look left, look right. And we made our city a leader. We felt on that date, we had the attacks in New York, we had in Pennsylvania, Flight 93, and then we had the Pentagon where we lost so many Marylanders in those attacks. So this is something that I have worked on, particularly these issues of terrorism and protecting the homeland, nonstop for the last decade or more. So
Steve Shigaris, our political editor, please
so
jump
in this context of the former mayor of Baltimore versus the Secretary of State, how do you convince Democrats who, by the way, in our last poll, 53% of Democratic primary voters are very confident in Hillary Clinton's ability to handle international crisis? How do you convince Democratic voters that you are a better choice in these kinds of situations than Hillary Clinton?
You do it one state at a time, beginning with Iowa, followed by New Hampshire. And when I've traveled around both Iowa, New Hampshire, and other places, heads nod when I say there is no area of American policy in greater need of fresh thinking than American foreign policy. It's not about just looking around for the next dictator to topple. It's about a whole of government approach. It's about sustainable development, our economic powers, and I think that's frankly been lacking over these last 10, 15 years. And I believe that Secretary Clinton has a very quick reflex to always grab for the military tool. And I believe that we can't afford to do that as a nation. We have to be in front of these threats before they rise to a level where we're backed into military corners. We need to invest in human intelligence. We need to recognize that we have a global commons to defend now in so many ways, including cybersecurity. These are the new realities of a new century. This is not the world of the 1990s. This is not the 20th century world of conflict. This is a new era of conflict and warfare, and it requires new thinking and new leadership.
Do you feel as a former governor that you have to prove to Democratic voters your breadth of knowledge on this subject, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, I think it's certainly fair for them to ask, as they do when every time I'm up and engaging in a search for better answers with my neighbors. We have had many governors who have served in the office of President of the United States, including Franklin Roosevelt and Bill Clinton and many others who didn't necessarily have the resume of having been Secretary of State, but that did not mean they weren't capable of leading. On the contrary, these are leaders who understood what executive leadership's about, and that's particularly important in the international area. I'm very clear about my principles, and I'm clear about our country's principles.
Lynda, want to jump in, please?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, you obviously had some bright and shining moments tonight, and your slogan says it all, actions, not words. Seems like you've been able to get that across. My question is, how are you planning to capitalize on some of this newfound energy tonight, and are you going to shift your strategy at all based on it?
Yeah, well, we have about 37 staffers on the ground here in Iowa, and no challenger. When you look back at one of the truths about Iowa is that the polls in November never look anything like what the decision is on caucus night. And that's been a rule that's held true every year. We now have an opportunity as a campaign to make our case for generational change and the need for new leadership in Washington that can get things done in ways that I think are going to draw very, very stark contrast between Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders. People do not believe that we're going to be able to solve our problems or move our country out of these rather divided and polarized times by either resorting to a debate about the pros and cons of socialism or by returning to a very polarized leader in Secretary Clinton, who said in the last debate, quite famously, that she considers that she's proudest of the fact that Republicans are her enemies. I don't believe that Republicans are our enemies. I believe that there are our friends, they're our colleagues, they're our uncles, they're the paramedic that comes sometimes when you have to dial 911. I believe we're all in this together, and I believe that that's the larger attitude of especially where our country's headed and her younger people.
Governor O'Malley, I want to play another soundbite from the debate, something that Hillary Clinton said in the conversation that's getting a lot of traction online post-debate about the terminology radical Islam. Let's play that and have a conversation on the other side.
I don't think we're at war with Islam. I don't think we're at war with all Muslims. I think we're at war with jihadists who have...
Just to interrupt, he didn't say all Muslims. He just said radical Islam. Is that a phrase you don't...
I think that you can talk about Islamists who clearly are also jihadists, but I think it's it's not particularly helpful to make the case that Senator Sanders was just making, that I agree with, that we've got to reach out to Muslim countries. We've got to have them be part of our coalition. If they hear people running for president who basically shortcut it to say we are somehow against Islam.
So, Governor O'Malley, it's no surprise to you. You've heard this on the campaign trail from Republicans to the degree that you have time to sift through all the things that they say, that one of the problems in this conflict with terrorism is President Obama and other Democrats refuse to call it by the name they say it is: radical jihadism, radical Islam. Do you think that's a relevant part of this conversation? And you just implied a moment ago that Hillary Clinton is too prone to reach for military solutions. Is that a point of criticism, and how do you really differentiate yourself between her and you on that point?
Yeah, first of all, on the language, I think the more accurate language, I wasn't aware that this is the latest sort of ha-ha, gotcha, set a trap thing from the Republican candidates. I believe that the most accurate term is radical jihadists. So I think that's a better term to use. Look, these brutal, ruthless, genocidal actors in ISIL, I mean, they're also kind of equal opportunity murderers. I mean, they talk to the Chaldean Christians, Christians, Jews, Muslims. They are an apocalyptic group. They need to be confronted, and they're also perverting the name of a great world religion. We need now more than ever to understand that the vast majority of Muslim Americans are our front lines in this battle. On Secretary Clinton and her and my differences with her, I think we've lacked a whole of government approach. I think that we fail our military.
And by that, what do you mean?
I mean that we should not wait until problems become so large that the only options that we appear to have is grabbing for the military tool. I also believe that it is irresponsible to get involved in the toppling of a dictator without asking what is the next step after this. There's more to building up a sustainable democracy than simply knocking over a dictator. I mean, look at the mess that has been made and the cascading effects of that blunder, that horrible decision to actually invade Iraq, something that Secretary Clinton voted for. It's hard to look back on the cascading effects of that and say that we actually applied a whole of government approach. Secretary Clinton said today, we left an Iraqi army in place that was capable of defending Iraq. Well, actually, it wasn't. It wasn't. And it's been proven that it wasn't. So we need to do better as a nation. Our mission in the world is not to go roaming the planet looking for monsters to destroy. But we do need to confront evil when it rises and it has the sort of reach that now ISIL has. This is an imperfect and dangerous world, but our way through it is not to put everything on the back of our military. We need to use our economic, our diplomatic, and we need to rebuild the human intelligence on the ground that has, for some reason, been shown time and time again not to have the capacity that it should for a great nation.
Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, thank you very much for joining us. Three candidates on stage. Only one of them had the bravery to come up here and talk to us afterwards. You were it. When this debate started on Twitter, former Governor O'Malley was pulling 4% of the conversation. When the debate ended, it was 15%.
All right.
That's a move up. I don't know what it indicates.
It's a 300% improvement.
It's his job to find out, and that's going to be some of the work he'll do going forward. Safe travels to you, Governor. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks a lot.